Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our FPI webinar on recycling pizza boxes, paper cups, and other paper-based takeout containers. I am your host and moderator today. My name is Ashley Elzinga. I am the Director of Sustainability and Outreach for the Food Service Packaging Institute. Just a few quick housekeeping items. Just to let you all know, this webinar is being recorded. All attendees are on mute. And if you do have a question, we ask you to use the Q&A function to submit those questions. I will be monitoring those, and we'll field those when the question and answer section comes up at the end of the webinar. But first, for today's agenda, I'm going to be giving a quick introduction about FPI, who we are and what we do. Then we're going to hear from Matt Todd from RRS. He's going to be talking about the mill and end market list for paper cups. And then we're going to hear from Scott Byrne from Sunoco, giving a MRF perspective on the recyclability of paper items. And then we'll hear from Lisa Bowles from Smurfit Westrock about the end market perspective being the paper mill. And then the community perspective by David Ingram from the city of Wilmington. And then that question and answer section that I mentioned. So just quick about FPI. We were established in 1933, so we've been around for a while. We are the only trade association in North America that's solely focused on food service packaging. Our members include converters and their raw material suppliers. So that would be the paper mills, those would be the resin suppliers and the machinery suppliers. So we represent about 90% of the industry here in the US and Canada. And then we also have an affiliate membership, understanding that we need to also work on a lot of issues with food service distributors and operators, and those operators being the restaurants, the brands, grocery store operations, things like that. So what is food service packaging? Food service packaging, we are specifically focused on working with cups, containers, boxes, and bags. Those are a variety of materials such as plastic, polypropylene, PET, polystyrene, foam polystyrene, as well as polycoated paper, and then compostable plastics and paper as well. We have 4 recovery groups under the FPI umbrella. These are separately funded from FPI. So this is, we call our special interest groups. And so we do have the Foam Recycling Coalition, where we give out grants for recycling polystyrene foam. We have the Paper Cup Alliance, where we're working on paper cup recycling. And then the Plastics Recovery Group and the Paper Recovery Alliance working on the recovery and composting of paper and plastic food service items. Here is our current membership, and you can see we have a great representation from across the supply chain. Like I mentioned, we have the material suppliers, the converters, brands, we have recyclers and brokers as well. And then just to give you a quick overview of the approach when we are looking at recovering items and recycling, we do a lot of foundational work. We work on resolving end market barriers, dispelling myths, and member support. I'll talk about some of those myths that we worked on a little bit later. And then we want to really increase access for the communities and residents to recycle these items or compost them. So, when we get a community and we add a community, we like to track that access. We like to communicate and educate residents on not just our materials, but refresh the whole education, program that the city does. And then we encourage spontaneous uptake, because if there's a community that's using one MRF, there's no reason why a different community that's using that same MRF, they could try and encourage them to recycle those items as well. And then our overall goal is to increase the recovery of food service packaging. So our groups started back in 2012. We started, so we've been doing this for over a decade. And what you see here is really what we call our foundational work. This is all the studies and reports and research that we've done to bolster our claims for recyclability and compostability of our products. So you can see in 2013 and 2014, we did a food residue study. All the way, we refreshed that in 2022. We have increased our paper mills that accept, food service packaging from 4 back in 2018, all the way up to, 34 now. So we have done a lot of great work over the years, and we are excited to talk about it. So a couple studies that I think that will be relevant today and to help color the conversation is our food residue study refresh that we did in 2022. We have found that food service and food contact packaging, so this might be, food packaging that you'll find on a retail shelf that would get recycled, like a, maybe a cereal box or something of that nature. We found that food service packaging and food contact packaging are generally clean. They are actually the same amount of residue, across the board. We did find a little bit that OCC and molded fiber has a little bit more residue, but it's really not that much more contaminated than the other items. So I think Melissa linked that in the chat, or you could scan the QR code if you guys would like to check out that report. And then another great work that we do that colors what our outreach work is the resident messaging study. And this is really important because we want to make sure we are communicating our efforts and the recyclability of our products to residents as much as we can, and we want to make sure we're doing that effectively. So we asked a few questions and a few where do you look for recycling info? And the first place that we found that residents looked is on the package. And then the second place they get information from is from their recycling program. And then, we also showed them the cup that's on your screen, a polypropylene coffee cup, cold coffee cup. We asked them, what would you do if you were given this? You were done with your coffee. How would you prepare this to be recycled? And we found that most would empty it before they recycled it. And where we've had community partnerships and our education efforts, those FPI partner communities have shown fewer respondents that would recycle as is. So what that means is that they would actually dump out the coffee and they would do clean and empty. And clean and empty is actually the messaging that we use for our program. So it's really reassuring that we see those efforts, our recycling and communication efforts are actually, doing what we want them to do. So with that, I will hand this over to Matt Todd, a senior consultant at RRS, to talk about our mill and end market list. Matt Todd, he specializes in consulting, focused on sustainable materials management. He has 27 years of waste and recycling experience derived from direct service in the public sector and then also consulting efforts in the private sector. Matt's expertise includes solid waste and recycling programs, end markets for recycled materials, grant programs, and building circular economies. Since 2015, Matt has supported FPI's efforts to engage with MRFs, end markets, and communities to expand the acceptance and recyclability of paper cups and other food service packaging. Thank you for joining us, Matt. I encourage you to come off mute and turn on your video and take us through your slides. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, everyone, for joining the webinar. So that intro you saw from Ashley on the FPI work has been, there's been a lot of efforts, foundational work, and essentially the root of the work around paper cup is we start on the back end. So we really start on the end market side before we really institute paper cup recycling in any one community. So one of the things I wanted to share here is our newly updated. We've done a lot of work this year to get a few more mills in this list. But what you see here is the end markets for paper cups. So these are either in polycoat bales or in mixed paper bales. Essentially, we have a mill spec that includes paper cups in one of those bales. And we've done a lot of testing across the board with a lot of these mill companies. But essentially this grouping of mills that you see, it's about 3/4 of the mixed paper demand domestically, and it's about 1/3 of the number of mills that consume mixed paper. And again, this is post-consumer mixed paper that these mills are buying out in the marketplace. And there's the code here to scan, and I think that the link to this end markets list has also been put in the chat. And then sort of more detail. So those were dots on the map, but these are the actual facilities. So you can see, we've got a number of big consumers, large consumers of mixed paper, from Cascades to Georgia Pacific, Pratt, Smurfit Westrock, Sunoco. So a lot of end markets for paper cups in mixed paper bales. And for a lot of these, we have done testing. So we've done mill testing, we've done mill trials. They've run paper cups through their facilities. They're not just saying, yeah, we'll take it, but they've done the testing required to have the confidence that this material will add to their furnish. And most of the paper cups are in the ballpark of 92% fiber, really good, long grained white virgin fiber in those paper cups. So we want to make sure we get those recovered and get that fiber back into the marketplace. I also want to mention too that another outlet for paper cups is in with a carton bale. So this is again, this is a mil spec carton polycoat bale. We've got a number of facilities that will buy that material as well. And then in addition to the domestic marketplace that you see here, and also the way that MRFs move material, so they move a lot of material either through brokers to these mills or through brokers offshore into the export marketplace. So we have a number of we started this broker list. So you see here. This is the brokers that we have. We're continuing to add to that. But we've got folks that move material domestically, they move material to the Far East, they move material to India, so really across the board and in various states. So paper cups in with cartons to that polycoat bale, or paper cups in mixed paper for the most part. We'll go to the next slide. And then Ashley mentioned our community partnerships. So one side of this work that we do is the operational side. It's really the end market side, the MRF side, the sortation side. But then there's also the resident messaging side. So really that's where our community partnerships come into play. And we would love to anybody on this call that's interested in working with FPI to roll out the program, use our resources to do that resident messaging, to add paper cups, add other food service packaging to your accepted materials list. You can see the list of communities that we've worked with in the past. We've got others in the pipeline that are coming online over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. And we're starting to do more work on the West Coast. As you see, there's no green dots over there yet, but as a lot of the EPR programs have come to fruition, and we're working in those areas to address our material concerns. So with that, we'll move on to speak to more of the MRF considerations and the mill considerations around paper cup and pizza box recycling. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Up next, we have Scott Byrne from Sunoco. He serves as the Director of Global Sustainability Services at Sunoco, a global packaging solutions leader. He has a background in environmental management and sustainability, and Scott helps ensure Sunoco is on the cutting edge of sustainability initiatives. He is currently a board member and immediate past board president of the American Institute for Packaging and the Environment, also known as Ameripen. And prior to joining Sunoco, Scott was the market sustainability manager for the US and Canada at Tetra Pak and the director of government affairs at the Carton Council of North America. So thank you for being here, Scott, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. And thanks for the invitation. We're facing similar questions for a lot of packaging formats that Sunoco makes across the globe. I do think, we have an opportunity here to really point to the recycling of pizza boxes, cups, and other paper-based takeout containers as a growing success story in North America that I think other packaging formats actually would like to emulate. So on the next page or next slide, I did just want to highlight, who Sunoco is and why we're here kind of representing MRFs in this conversation. So Sunoco is a large packaging provider, kind of split between consumer and industrial, and we make a wide range of formats, really everything but glass. But we do rigid paper containers, kind of like paper cups. We do rigid and flexible plastics, and we do metal packaging, food cans, and aerosols. And sustainability really is now one of the key drivers of the business. Some of that we've done, I'd say, voluntarily, and some of it has been kind of pushed upon us, whether that's extended producer responsibility, recycled content mandates, or the potential product bans that are out there. We've kind of had to embrace sustainability, and I'd say more and more sustainability means recyclability for consumer packaging. On the next slide, just a little bit more detail maybe on kind of the different core businesses we have in packaging. This was taken from a recent investor slide deck. We're actually acquiring another metal packaging business in Europe, and that's why that's highlighted. But really, similar issues that we see across all of these packaging formats, and our MRFs are actually asked to solve these issues for a wide range of packaging. But I will say, on the next slide, this will kind of highlight this, that at our core, Sonoco is still a fiber-based company. It's kind of our culture. We started in Hartsville, South Carolina with a paper mill, and we have 10 mills across North America, more abroad, but most of those mills are in the US Southeast, and so most of the fiber that we procure comes from Sonoco Recycling. So we're collecting over 2.6 million tons of material, 70% of that OCC, but also mixed paper and other things that you'd expect to see within a MRF. We have 21 locations. A lot of those are commercial recycling plants, like what would come from a big box store like a Walmart. But here in the Carolinas, we also have 5 single-stream material recovery facilities, which we've worked with FPI and others like Closed Loop Partners to start to add the number of fiber-based food service containers that we've put in our programs. So I did want to talk a little bit on that next slide about what that might mean for our MRF. And I know I'm the MRF section, but I really can't get away from this conversation without mentioning our end market, because our MRFs, really do exist to feed our paper mills. And so while they're looking at collection, sortation, and processing, ultimately, if the end market says they can take it and they want it, the MRF is going to get it to them. So, in the US, single stream collection is really the focus of all of our residential MRFs. There may be a touch of dual stream, but I think it might be 100% single stream. Very different than what we see in Europe with multiple streams of material. And that really means that for our MRFs, our focus has been on technology on the sortation side, especially as we start to add different materials or different formats, or if we start to kind of make new bales of material, potentially something like that aseptic carton cup kind of blended bale. So we've been working a lot with optical sorters and near infrared detection. In our MRFs, we have optical sorters that both move contaminants out of mixed paper, so it's sorting out things like plastic bags. We also have optical sorters that are moving fiber-based containers off the container line and back into a mixed paper bale. So if a cup gets sorted to the container line, that optical sorter could actually get it to a kind of useful location within the MRF. When it comes to processing, we're obviously looking at mechanical process at our paper mills, but I will say when we look at paper-based food service items, a lot of times there is a plastic coating. And while that plastic coating isn't an issue for our mill in Hartsville, South Carolina, we are looking at things like either mechanical processing or potentially chemical processing for that plastic component as we start to say, hey, how else can we use some of this material as we start to see more of it in our mill? So I think last slide that I have does touch on the mill. And like I said, for our MRF, we kind of started some of these conversations with FPI and Closed Loop Partners back in 2020. And at the time, our Hartsville mill was undergoing a fairly large evolution, a reinvestment, really focused on the stock prep system. So we said, we want to consume more mixed paper. When that was finished, we then looked around and said, okay, well, what does mixed paper mean? What can we actually use? So we started kind of mid-2021 on a product that we made, a rigid paper can, kind of think like a Pringles can. And we said, is this something we can use? Trialed, tested, expanded that to all of our mills by 2021. And then we said, okay, well, let's keep pushing this to see what else we can include. So paper cups, we were able to test both in our labs, at our mill. We were testing single-sided paper cups, double-sided paper cups, so hot and cold, and did validate that in our Hartsville mill, that new stock prep system really has no issues with paper cups. But it wasn't until March 29th of last year that our MRF was finally able to kind of flip the switch, validate that they could sort it, and then expand access at our Wilmington, North Carolina MRF. So since then, I think the other 4 MRFs have also said we're on board with paper cups. But I think it is a something to acknowledge that groups like FPI, they have to kind of fight these fights with the MRF maybe for years to go from concept to actually having those community partners adding materials to their facilities. So I think that does it for slides. I think I still have a minute. One other thing I'd add from a MRF perspective is a big challenge that they have is they hear things like, we would add paper cups, but what if someone stuffs their muffin into their paper cup? We'd add other food service containers, but what if you get, all of your French fries in, or that pizza in a pizza box? And it's always surprising me that people lack the conviction that folks will eat the food that they're given. But I do think that research that FPI put out there on food residue studies saying, the food residue isn't there. They're not seeing it. And most people will actually empty out a cup before throwing it into a recycling bin. Really is important to give MRFs and end markets some comfort that if they add something, they're not going to be making a mess in their facility that might impact other streams of material. So with that, Ashley, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Scott. And that's a great illustration of why we at FPI work backwards. We start with the mills to create that demand pull and then go to the MRFs. Wouldn't really call it a fight. I'd call it more of courting, but appreciate your perspective. So up next, we have Lisa Bowles. She is the Senior Segment Marketing Manager for the food service and dairy segments at Smurfit Westrock. She specializes in developing market strategies for packaging that provide sustainable solutions for their customers. Prior to joining Smurfit Westrock, Lisa spent over 20 years in the food service distribution space, developing and marketing food service brands for restaurant operators. Welcome, Lisa. I'm looking forward to hearing what you're gonna talk to us about.
Yes, good afternoon to each one of you. I thought we'd start on this slide. In case you haven't heard, Westrock is now Smurfit Westrock as of last week. We did merge with Smurfit Kappa, and now we're the largest paper or fiber-based packaging company in the world. So exciting times. But today we're going to talk about pizza box recycling. So next slide. So if you see across the top here, there are 3 important questions to ask. And if I could see your faces or your hands as you raise them, what I typically see is pretty much a 50-50 break in how you answer them, yes or no. So are pizza boxes technically recyclable? Do consumers know pizza boxes are recyclable, and do they recycle them? And then are pizza boxes accepted in your local recycling program? So 3 very similar questions, but very different questions. And really what it comes down to is a lot of confusion. And so we set out about 5 years ago to really create a common understanding that pizza boxes are recyclable and to facilitate their acceptance in residential recycling programs. So with that, that's a big undertaking, but it falls nicely into the ESG categories of environmental. So basically increasing the volume of fiber that's returned to the circular economy, because at the end of the day, Smurfit Westrock, along with our other packaging competitors, are all looking for that fiber. We become the consumer of that fiber. From a social aspect, we wanted to create and maintain a single source of truth for all of the pizza box recycling facts. I'm sure if you're on this call that maybe at some point you've Googled pizza box recycling. There's a lot of myths. There's a lot of different opinions. And we just wanted to, through our work and our studies that I'm going to share with you, create and maintain that single source of truth. And then third, from a governance standpoint, is really to spread that truth and to make sure that all stakeholders within the circular economy understand that pizza boxes are recyclable. So everything from the mills, the MRFs, the haulers, the brands, consumers, everybody, all the above. So next slide. And really, to do this, we can't do it alone. So we see it as three industries coming together. So obviously the paper industry, as I said, we are the consumer of that recycled fiber, but we're also putting it into the market or the environment. So we want to be good product stewards as well to get it back. The recycling industry, and many of you who work for these logos are on this call. So we work with you on a daily basis, and we're active members of these organizations, and we're working to help spread the message in each one of the areas of the recycling community that each of these organizations touch. And then thirdly, the pizza industry, and those are the brands. And so, in many cases, we're making the packaging, which is in a great real estate to help educate consumers about pizza box recycling and what they should do with their package. So we work closely with those brands. I'm not going to go through all the check marks here or the X's, but this is kind of our checklist and things that we're trying to do to help further this project. And as you can see, we still have some work to do. And this is part of why we're here today, to help clear that confusion at the other stakeholder levels. So next slide, please. So I'm sure you all know, if you're on this call, the Federal Trade Commission has green guidelines that we all must abide by to basically state that something is recyclable. There's a lot more detail than what I'm sharing here, but the two main things that we set out to prove is that, first of all, to call anything recyclable, it has to be able to be collected, separated, or recovered, and then reused or remanufactured into something else. In this case, we're talking about a pizza box. The second important check mark is that to confirm that 60% of US consumers have access to a recycling program that accepts that product, in this case, pizza boxes. So my next slides will tell you how we went about doing that. So next. So first of all, from a technical standpoint, to make sure that there's nothing standing in the way from collecting those boxes and recycling them and creating new boxes from them, we conducted a grease and cheese study. We did do it internally. You see the little graphic here. This is available. I believe we're going to be chatting out the URLs. This is public information. But when we first did this, we submitted it to AFMPA, and they conducted a sector review among all peers, all of their members, which actually makes up about 90% of the market. And they reviewed it and agreed basically with our methodology and our conclusion that minimal or expected amounts of grease and cheese do not affect the repulpability of paper, and therefore into recycling pizza boxes. So back in 2020, if you guys recall what was going on in those days, we did have to wait until the environment or the atmosphere was ready to hear news like this. But AFMPA did announce to the industry through a press release that pizza boxes were recyclable based on the study. So next slide. This just gives a little bit more detail, and I've put a QR code on here if you'd like to download the TAPI publication that was, there have been several releases of it. The first one, I believe, was in March 2021. But just a visual here to kind of say, because a lot of questions come up, what's too much grease, what's too much cheese. Basically, we did the math. We did the testing, but we also did the math, and it's based on, roughly there's about estimated 3 billion pizza boxes put into the market on an annual basis. When you combine that with all other OCC, all the Amazon boxes, all of the other boxes that are being recycled today, it's roughly, say, 4 or 5% of total OCC. Then when you look at the total amounts of expected grease and cheese, which you can see, part of our study here was to really weigh and measure those amounts, which on average is less than 2%. So when you do the math, the small amounts of cheese and grease and the whole, picture of OCC and recycling is minimal. So, our basic small amounts of grease and cheese that may be stuck to the box do not matter. And even the chunks of cheese are going to be screened out during the process. So next slide. So the second thing that we had to do is to prove the 60% of consumer access to recycling programs. And we partnered with RRS to prove this. So the purpose was to gain an understanding of what pizza box recycling programs were out there, to validate that that U.S. consumers have, or 60% of U.S. consumers have access to a program that recycles pizza boxes. We were able to confirm that with the study, but we also found, in addition to that, there's still a lot of gray area, and that's represented by my little gray box on the right side here that shows really a methodology that was created by RRS during the study. And it's not just a simple yes or no, they're accepted or not. It's really varying degrees. So you see 6 different buckets here, from explicitly accepts. That's basically the guidelines are clear. Consumers don't have to make a decision. All they need to do is to recycle their box or put it in their curbside recycling bin, all the way down to no program. Now, we're not solving for no program with this with this project, but we are focused now on those middle buckets. So we believe that those buckets or those guidelines are vague, and they require the consumer to make a decision. A lot of times they'll say take the top of the box off and recycle only the top, or tear off the grease and cheese stains. What we've proven is that does not matter, and we want to simplify the messaging. And so if you see at the top in the green, empty corrugated pizza boxes are recyclable. Please empty your corrugated pizza box and recycle it as you would any other corrugated box. It's that simple. It's simple. It's similar to what you're saying before about the cups, just empty and clean. We're not even saying clean, just empty, because we don't want to have I know when I tell my daughter to clean her room, that's a different definition of clean for me than it is for her. So we don't want people to have to decide that. So just empty the box and recycle it. And these are the exact guidelines we'd love to see on websites and municipalities and wherever consumers go to get their recycling guidance. So next slide. And so with all of that said, we have created the Scan, Learn, Recycle program. You may have seen it on several pizza box programs. We do have 5 customers that are working with this program now. Here's one. If I can get this into view, into focus. My blurred background is messing up, but this is Domino's. We actually launched our project in 2020 with Domino's. So their QR code leads to our website that we maintain and manage. And then we've also launched, our second customer was, and this is going to be hard to see, but our second customer is Performance Food Group, who is the largest food service distributor supplying pizza supplies and food. So we feel like we've, we're working with some of the largest customers out there with pizza boxes. And this program is available to consumers. They scan the QR code that's on the box. This is the simplified or unbranded version, but each of our customers has a branded version. So it's their messaging in their voice, but basically it allows consumers to learn what we've learned and to enter their zip codes and understand recycling guidelines in their area. So that's what I have today. Ashley?
Great, thank you. That's interesting, and I'll keep an eye out for those pizza boxes from now on with the QR codes. So great. Up next, we have the community perspective. We're going to have David Ingram. He is the sustainability manager for the city of Wilmington, North Carolina. David's work includes guiding the city to achieve their clean energy, GHG emission reduction, recycling, and waste reduction goals. David is a lead AP with over 15 years of experience in the sustainability field in both the public and private sector. So I will turn it over to you, David.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, thanks for having me as well to provide the perspective of a local government here in southeastern North Carolina. I just wanted to quickly kind of go over some of our goals for recycling and trash services, as well as just provide, a brief overview of our services that we provide, our communication that we provide out to our citizens, as well as just, the messaging around some of these new products that are now being, that we're now being able to recycle. So, we really just want to manage our recycling and trash services and be good stewards of the environment. You know, we really do live in a beautiful location here on the coast of North Carolina. We want to be able to preserve that quality of life and for our community and our natural resources. Next slide, please. Yeah, just a brief overview of the kind of robust trash and recycling services that we provide out across the city. We have our, you know, the city owns and operates our own waste haulers. It's an enterprise service here within the city that handles our curbside trash collection on a weekly basis, as well as a voluntary recycling program that's provided at no extra charge across our city to residents. And we also, you know, handle yard waste pickups on a weekly basis and things like oversized bulky items that we can pick up by appointment. And then a totally separate service that the city provides down in our central business district, which is really where the core of it's a much more dense streets where our large recycling vehicles can't get to. The image here is actually of one of our mini packers that operates in our central business district. It's a little easier to navigate. And, you know, that's where many of our restaurants and, you know, after hours services are located. So we really have a very much a separate type of service in that dense central business district based on the number of pickups that our customers may need there and just their level of operation. So just a brief overview there. Then, yeah, how do we communicate? Well, for one, we've begun to implement the Recycle Right program across all of our messaging. That's kind of a statewide effort that was put through by North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality to use standardized images and messaging so that we're kind of all communicating the same recycling message across the state. So we began using that a few years ago. The NCDEQ is great about providing the resources and any editing that we may need, such as adding new items onto the list, which you know, we've had to do here with, you know, things like the paper cups, pizza boxes, and a few other items. So that standardized messaging has really helped us simplify the message that goes out to our residents, make it a little bit easier to understand, and really just provide some kind of clean images that people can relate to in the products that they use every day. We provide that we very much have a very robust recycling and trash services website. That's actually the image of the annual messaging flyer that we send down. On the flip side of that, there's actually a calendar that has everyone's pickup dates based on where they're located in the city. And, you know, we also do a number of education and outreach events where we try to answer questions from our citizens about trash services and recycling. That's very much always a topic of discussion is, what can I recycle? You know, people, you know, we find that a lot of people are moving here from other areas of the country where the recycling services may have been different. So very much being able to communicate about what we're doing right here within the city. You know, and, you know, I'll have to add that, you know, we very much do value the relationship we have with our local MRF and with Sunoco. So whatever we can do to increase the collection of those materials that they're using as raw materials for their products and services, it really does help us increase our recycling rate and extend the life of our landfill. So we are very much interested in joining this process with the Food Project Institute by becoming a community partner. And of course, yeah, just another item on there. We do a lot of just direct outreach, either through mailers or things like door hangers to directly, if we have a new item that we add, we pretty much try to get that out as soon as possible. So yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, and yeah, just some of the examples of some of the messaging that was sent out through our social media for the paper cups. Another item we recently added were coffee pods that also became recyclable. So being able to get messaging out through a variety of communication means is what we found to be very effective. So all of our social media platforms, we're pushing this messaging out, and we have some billboards that we use around the city as well that we're able to push out messaging. So yeah, and yeah, I included the slide just to show some of the challenges that we have and things we're looking for in the future. We're about to move towards automated side loaders, which we're gonna hope, it's very much planned to increase our productivity. They can service a lot more households on a daily basis. We can go from 2 drivers per truck to just 1. We're doing some route optimizations to again improve our efficiency. And, we're a growing city with a lot of new development. So we're facing a lot of expanding service areas and just, more strain on the resources that we have. And of course, down the road, probably like a lot of communities, we're looking at electrifying our fleet of vehicles to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and deal with some of those issues as well. So I think that's all I had. Yeah. Guess we'll move it on towards the Q&A portion. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, David. And I love that new picture of the shiny truck, but I'm sure it's not gonna stay like that long. So I would like to welcome all of our panelists to come off mute and turn on your video. We've been getting a lot of great questions in the Q&A section, so I'll make sure to get to those. But we did have some submitted to when people were registering, so I'll jump into those first. And so this question's going to be for Matt. So Matt, when you're going into a MRF, does a MRF, do they need any specialized equipment to recover paper items? And then, what kind of software, if there is a equipment, like what kind of use AI to sort items? That was another question we had.
Gotcha. Yeah, so in the MRF, relative to paper cup, so there's a number of paper cups that'll just flow normally to mixed paper or to the fiber line, so they'll stay on there. But there's probably, well, I'll just say 60% of those cups will end up on the container line. So you maybe heard Scott mention, they have technology at their MRF that basically pulls fiber off the container line, and typically that's back to your fiber bunker. In some cases, you're pulling fiber like polycoat cartons or something like that into a polycoat bale. So there's different options, but you will get a number of those paper cups will end up on the container line, and you will need to get those pulled off in one way or the other. You can do that through optical sortation. You can do that through robotics, which has AI. Or that can be a manual sort on your last chance line or something like that. But it really depends on the volume of the MRF, size, burden depth, all the things that impact what type of equipment you use for that. But just, that's one of the things we do when we work with our community partners, especially with our MRF partners, is making sure they know where that recovery should happen for paper cup. And as far as the AI goes, I think there was a question specific to that. The AI identifies the item as a paper cup. It's a picture that it remembers in different formats, whether it's a crushed cup or a flat cup or a whole cup or a Starbucks cup or some other branded cup. It knows to pick that and pull it off the conveyor belt. So.
All right, great. Thank you, Matt, for that. And so I want to ask the paper mills. So compostable coatings, are they any different than PE coatings? We've been getting a lot of questions about like pulping. How do you test the bales? What is your process like when you are looking to add a new product to your mill list, or to your mill acceptance? Sorry, products. So I think, Scott, you kind of touched on it a little bit, the testing. So could you just walk us through that process?
Yeah, sure thing. And Lisa, you can add in. I think we start off at the lab, and so we do kind of smaller scale trials. We have a lab in Hartsville with a small kind of pulping unit to see if there's any obvious problems. And then basically once we get sign off from the lab, generally they'll be able to say we either A, can't use this, or B, can use it up to a certain percent in a bale like mixed paper. We usually then will do a full scale trial at the mill, see if there's any kind of surprises, or maybe if there's any stickies or kind of things getting through to the paper that could cause a quality issue. So I don't know if we've looked at compostable coatings specifically, but that is usually the pathway of testing that we take.
Okay, great. And then Lisa, we got a lot of questions about how that is filtered out. Would you mind just briefly touching on that?
I'll do the best I can. I don't work in a mill or a MRF. And so, basically from the study, and you've put the links in there. So I would say, really, if you want all the details, which there are a ton in the TAPI journal publication, please take a look at that. But, basically they're screened out. And if they're stuck to the fiber, we've proven that, it basically gets mixed in, and it's not a challenge.
All right, great. And then Matt,
Ashley,
oh, go ahead.
just real quick, just want to add just to the folks on this webinar, if you haven't been to a paper mill and you don't know what a pulper does, it's like a big blender. And essentially what gets through the pulper to make fiber is fiber. Everything else is screened out. They've got like 500 layers of screening technology that's in there. So if it's not a fiber product, if it's stickies, if it's tape, if it's poly, if it's food, if it's whatever it is, it's not getting through to make paper. And if it does, that's the material they don't want. So just real quick, a lot of stuff happens in that pulper, and the stuff that's not paper typically goes and gets screened off.
Perfect. Thank you. So also, I'll stick with you, Matt, because you had that map of communities who are currently taking paper cups. Can you just clarify that, are those all the communities that take paper cups, or are those just the communities that we have worked with?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the map I showed, so one of the programs that FPI has that we run is our community partnership program. So those are partners that FPI has worked with directly on not just paper cups, but all sorts of other food service packaging, on resident messaging, on recovery, and making sure all those pathways are identified and taken care of. Yeah, there's lots of other communities across the country that have included, for instance, paper cups in their programs, basically the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, that marketplace, San Francisco. I know the whole Rumpke footprint in Ohio is doing paper cups. I know the Casella footprint in the Northeast is getting ready to do paper cups if they're not already. And then, cities like New York City and places like that. So there's other areas that we have not been involved with that also recycle paper cups, but the map just shows the communities that FPI has partnered with on getting programs up and running.
Yeah, yep. And I think we call those our organic apps, which we definitely like that. So I'm going to switch over to David, because there's been a couple questions on your program. So, challenge did you face when you're achieving your recycling and waste reduction goals?
I'm sorry, you broke up on the first part of that, Ashley. What was that?
What challenges does the city of Wilmington, what do you guys face when you're achieving your recycling and waste reduction goals?
Yeah, well, it's a constant education piece. As I mentioned, we're a growing city. We have a lot of new people moving here from other areas of the country. So yeah, I mean, we realize that education and outreach is going to be an ongoing effort. So just communicating that as frequently, as thoroughly as we can. We do a lot of education and outreach events at a number of events around the city on an ongoing basis. Recycling and trash services is always a part of that. Yeah, I just think it's that constant education and outreach. So, we certainly always try to address contamination when we see problem areas pop up. Our crews are really good about, leaving those sticky notes and, congratulations if you're recycling well, or hey, here's something you could do better. They carry those just quick things that they can stick on residential carts as they see it. So kind of spot inspections, if you will, are very helpful as well.
Great. That's some great insight. And so, you know, from the residential perspective, how has the response been from, you know, adding paper cups to your program? That's me personally, I'm curious.
So, some questions, of course. You know, over the last year, I think recycling in general has faced some challenges. We get the questions all the time. Are these items really being recycled? And you know, we often steer them to the MRF and say, hey, you know, they actually do they do tours. You're welcome, you know, to look them up and see actually what is going on there. But yeah, it's again, it's that education outreach portion that we really try to hammer all the time.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you. I see there's a question for me in the chat asking about, do we advise food service packaging companies to determine if they should include the recycling symbol or disposal information on their products? And I'll just answer is we can't advise our members, but we can encourage them, right? So we can encourage them to do their research, and we provide them, you know, with the FCC green guides. We let them know, you know, making good actionable claims for recyclability, check locally, disclaimers are always great. And the same thing with compostability, working with how to recycle, the recycling partnership, they track access, but it's not just access, as we know, it's also the getting the item through the system, right? You want to make sure that it's sorted correctly. You want to make sure that it's getting to the end markets and actually being recycled. And, you know, you saw that foundational work. My question, it seems like a while ago, but that, you know, we do all that for all of our products to, you know, go out and say, hey, we want to make sure that these products are getting recycled, they're getting composted, and here is all of our research to back that up. And then we go out and try to put the rubber to the road, so to say, and actually make that happen. So as I said, we can't advise, but we encourage and we provide them resources in how to market their products correctly. So I've also been seeing a lot of questions about whether I should recycle food service, paper food service items, or if we should compost them. I don't think it's an or question. I think it's an and, right? If you have composting, great. If you have recycling, great. If you have both, amazing, because you're doing a lot better than a lot of the rest of the country is doing, because, you know, composters that actually accept compostable packaging is low. It's less than, I think, 100 communities that can do it out of the 20,000 in the US, you know, and the ones that actually recycle or compost curbside is even less. So we are recovery method agnostic. You know, we want products to be recycled. We want them to be composted. We just don't want them to be littered. We don't want them to be in the landfill. We want to make sure that these are a net benefit or a net neutral item. So that's what so again, I don't think compost, it's not recycling versus composting. It can be both. So
I would say,
yeah, sure.
just real quick, I would say, am I on mute? No. We want the fiber. So we're a consumer of that fiber. So if you ask us that question at Smurfit West Rock, we would prefer that you recycle because we would like to have that fiber. But there's an argument both ways, like you said.
I guess it's worth saying the Sunoco paper mill would also like the fiber.
We'll share.
Yes, fair, very fair, because we, FPI, our material mentioned, we do composting and recyclable products. So paper mills want their fiber, resin manufacturers want their resin back, and then composting manufacturers want their products composted. So yes, thank you, Lisa and Scott, for keeping me grounded there. So I think, let me see. We've been getting a lot of questions about other products that aren't food service, like coffee pods and wax paper and juice milk cartons. I'm sorry, I can't answer those because I don't know too much about those products. So apologies there. And I do know, I think, for the paper mills, wax paper is an issue. I'm not going to speak for you, but I know on the food service side specifically, I think for wax paper, I think there's like only a handful of items that are a very, very small portion of the marketplace that are even, wax really isn't used anymore. The majority of our items are poly-coated items for
Actually,
paper.
I'm obligated from a previous life to say that aseptic and gable top cartons are not wax coated. So that is not something you'll see in the marketplace.
Yes, no, fair enough. Tetra Pak, I know, and Carton Council. So, yes, and we partner with Carton Council to do those poly-coated bales. And like I said, food service majority is poly-coated as well. So, I guess this is also for mills. What type of packaging do you all manufacture with the recycled fibers? So when you repulp it, where does that go?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So our mills across the US are all 100% recycled mills. We make something called uncoated recycled board. That could end up in tubes and cores. So for industrial processes that are wrapping things like textiles, that core maybe was a paper cup. It could also be consumer products like the rigid paper cans, things like the Pringles can is that uncoated recycled board. So it can go back into food and beverage packaging. And then as other uses, if you're painting your house and use a paper kind of floor protector, oftentimes is a board from a Sunoco mill using some level of mixed paper.
All right,
And I would say we use recycled fiber in most all of our products.
Great, perfect. Thank you both for that. I think that is pretty close. Let me see if I can maybe snag one more question here. A lot of organics questions, which I kind of answered. So, and I guess this question for Lisa, I know you had the QR code and you can look up by, by the zip code, but we have a question that says, can we assume all, if any location or any municipality accepts corrugated, they take pizza boxes? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I wish we could say that, but according to the RS study, it's not that clear. So, if you remember the pie chart that I had where there's really 6 different scenarios from explicit acceptance to no program or implicitly prohibited, it's not a yes or no question. So that's why we had the statement, empty corrugated boxes are recyclable. Please recycle as you would any other corrugated box. And I know that somebody asked about, does it have to say corrugated? Our test only included corrugated boxes. So that's how we talk about it. So, but yeah, unfortunately, we can't assume that if they say corrugated, that really falls into the implicit acceptance. So.
Yeah, a lot of fine minutia, very niche that when you get down to the nitty-gritty details. So great. Thank you for clarifying that. So with that, I think we're going to end the webinar. We are at time. I appreciate everybody on here. If you have any questions or if you want the community to recycle paper cups or pizza boxes, feel free to reach out to myself, or you can go to recyclefsp.org. There's a lot of great resources on there. And so I'm happy to have you guys here, and thank you so much for joining us.